Hello, everyone. Big announcement. So, I've loved reading Brandon Sanderson the past few months, and I'm going to hop on to the Stormlight Archive train. I'm going to be starting a Discord. We are going to do kind of a Discord book club where I read Way of Kings, and I'm just going to give, my thoughts. And you guys can give your thoughts in Discord. Hopefully you guys use Discord / Discord, whatever. And the goal will be to read one of these huge things every month until November when Rhythm of War comes out. And then I'll be ready to read Rhythm of War with everyone. So I'm going to be doing a video on that maybe halfway through August. All right, so this is my first month review wrap up, and I'm doing both the review wrap up and preview in the same video because I'm just a rebel. And I'll link all the books that I talked about in previous reviews in this corner, one of the corners, and in the description. So as you guys know, I read these two books in the last 2 months, and I'm going to read the third book in the Thrawn series. I'm not going to show the cover art because the cover art itself is a spoiler almost. But I'm going to read that third book and awkwardly not show the cover when I do the spoiler-free review. But yes, I'm enjoying my reread of the Thrawn series, though. It's a bunch of fun. It was, written before the prequels were written, so it's kind of got a different outlook on the galaxy a little bit, but not too different. I mean, it still stays true to Star Wars. It has all the OG characters 5 years after Episode 6, and I feel like it does those characters well, and it's pretty good stories. The second book was definitely the most boring, but the ending was cool, and I remember the third book being better, so I have higher hopes, at least. I will also be reading book 2 of the Red Queen series, Glass Sword. I'm actually over halfway through it already. As I said in that review, Victoria Aveyard is from my hometown, so I feel like I have to read it, at least for hometown pride. And I mean, it's fantasy, so right up my alley, right? I also read Mark Lawrence's The Girl and the Stars, and I buddy read this with the channel Slowly Read. I will link his channel and my review to this book. We're talking about buddy reading more stuff, either Prince of Fools or the second book of the First Law series, because we had both read the first book a few months ago at this point, but neither of us have started the second book, so that would be perfect. And the second book I hear a lot more good things about in terms of plot and things actually happening in the book, because the first one, I mean, the characters are cool and all that, but nothing happened. Is it a spoiler to say nothing happened? I mean, I'll probably post a review of the first book of the First Law series just because I read it. I didn't post a review. It won't be fresh in my mind, but it's okay. Nonfiction. So, of course, I did the New York Times vlog. I'll talk about that a little later, but we're going to do a review of No Logo by Naomi Klein. First of all, Naomi Klein is great. I'm kind of starting to read everything in order. So after this, I'll read The Shock Doctrine. This book is kind of less relevant today politically, or just culturally or whatever. It says on the back, this is equal parts cultural analysis, political manifesto, mall rat memoir, and journalistic expose. I think that's fair enough. It is a history of how brands developed and were built. And it talks about companies like Nike. In the 70s and 80s or whatever, Nike was like a shoe company, a clothes company, But now it's more of a brand. They've outsourced all their jobs. They use third-party sweatshops in Cambodia or whatever, And they don't actually really make the clothes. They just buy the clothes and put their brand on it and then sell their brand. And their brand is more of an idea, a motivational sort of thing. And it's interesting to think about brands now, right? Because we're all brands. My YouTube channel is a brand. a very, 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 very small brand. But like even like PewDiePie is a brand. Big YouTubers are brands. Like people's Instagram pages are brands. They're branding themselves. They're self-promoting themselves on like a more micro level. And it's interesting to read about it on like a large multinational corporation level. And the large multinational corporations do scummy things that affect society more broadly. Like as an example, let's say I do a book review and I'm like paid to say positive things about it. Like that would have a very low impact. My book review would get like 30 views. It would have almost no impact on society, even though it's a bad thing that I did. And of course, I wouldn't do this. I haven't done this, but theoretically it's something I could do. But when you look at it from a more multinational corporation level, some of the negative effects it might have, doing things like having sweatshops, outsourcing deals, and shipping jobs off to other countries. Companies, long story short, basically doing anything to help them get money, even if it hurts society. If they think they can get away with it and not get bad PR from it, they'll do it. And yeah, I mean, I could talk about this book for a while. I've got notes. It's one of those books when I read like not even a chapter, but like part of a chapter. I have to get up, walk around, pace, and like ponder what I just read because Naomi Klein just crushes it. I'd recommend reading Naomi Klein. Maybe not this book. This book is a little outdated. Basically, all her books after this book, if they sound interesting, they are interesting. And The Shock Doctrine, I haven't read that yet, but I'm going to read that after this. That sounds amazing. And yeah, I mean, I want to talk about the shock doctrine this month as well because I know what the shock doctrine is. And most of the time, with just few exceptions, I have to like hear about the book to know what it is actually about. But I think with like the shock doctrine and manufacturing consent, those are two terms that come from the names of books, obviously, that have pervaded our society so much that everyone just knows what they mean even before reading the book. And I loved reading Manufacturing Consent, 8 months ago. And I feel like I'm going to get the same vibe from the shock doctrine. Oh, and for those of you who don't know what the shock doctrine is, I'll explain it briefly. Basically, when something horrible happens, governments, corporations, whatever, use that to do things that are very unpopular that they normally wouldn't be able to do, but that they want to do. So, for example, a great example from the actual book is the war in Afghanistan and Iraq. The powers that be wanted to do those wars already, but you can't just wake up on, January in 2000 and be like, oh, we're at war with Afghanistan now. Sorry, guys. No, you have to use a crisis like what happened on 9/11 to say, well, we need to do this. War on terror, national defense, etc., etc. And we just hopped into a war with Afghanistan after that. Were those bombers on those plane Afghans? No, they were Saudis. But, like, the Taliban, they might have been involved, so, like, we gotta, like, rally around the flag and, like, just, like, and, like, the war in Afghanistan, even to this day, it's more controversial about whether or not we should have gone in. The real controversial one is Iraq, especially now in hindsight. We realize that the government and, high-level officials, I should say, in the Bush administration lied about them having WMDs. They did not have nukes. But they realized they could get away with going to war because 9/11, because people were scared of just, basically any Muslim country. And Naomi Klein, from this book, I mean, she's talking about, like, cultural appropriation, and this book came out in 2000. Who was doing that? At that time, no one. Naomi Klein is like a visionary. She talked about like Amazon, like in 2000, and she said it might not be Amazon, but like this online sales thing is going to be just massive. And she recognized that what Amazon was doing was not just like selling products, it was brand building and being able to advertise endlessly, and that being how they're going to make their revenue. And just, data collection. Again, in 2000, before the internet existed as we know it, she understood all of these concepts, and she's using examples of, because again, the internet wasn't like the World Wide Web then. It was like dial-up stuff, and there were internal networks, and companies were, doing negotiations with, big city public school districts to get metadata on like teens. And she's like, oh, a company like Amazon, they'll be able to do that nationally and internationally and collect data on literally everyone. And that's going to be the future. Her recognizing that. So she's really ahead of the curve. Read Naomi Klein. And yeah, a few other things that I'll probably read. Just to recap: Shock Doctrine, Way of Kings, Star Wars Thrawn Book 3, probably Victoria Aveyard's Red Queen Book 3. This one I keep wanting to get to, How to Hide an Empire. I might not get there. And Warbreaker. Could I squeeze this in before Brandon Sanderson's Way of Kings? We'll see. We'll see how much time I have. I was DMing in a Dungeons & Dragons campaign, but that just ended last Tuesday. So, I mean, once I make a character and stuff, I'll have less of that work to do all the time. And, I work, 9 to 5, whatever. But that's been stable. I'm very fortunate in this time of instability for, I know, many of you in terms of employment and stuff. I guess I've just been fortunate. My heart goes out to anyone who's lost their job. And oh yeah, and the last thing, I do have to talk about the New York Times vlog. I didn't really get great feedback, or I didn't really get feedback, full stop. I enjoyed doing it though. I think I got better at talking about both things like Bret Stephens, who's honestly like a silly, hypocritical writer who doesn't talk about material issues. So like the bad end of the spectrum, I got better at talking about that. And like the good end of the spectrum, Jamal Bowie, David Leonhardt, sometimes Michelle Goldberg, Paula Krugman, sometimes. Yeah, I mean, I got better at talking about them, thinking about all that. But, forcing myself to read every New York Times op-ed, in hindsight, probably not the best idea, not the best for my mental health. Especially with how, unsubstantive a lot of their writers are. Again, Bret Stephens. David Brooks, they aren't talking, they write for the New York Times, but they don't talk about political issues that substantively affect people very often. So, what are you doing? And then Bret Stephens has the gall to complain about people who don't talk about substantive issues very often. It's just I feel like this is just a massive troll. But yeah, I'm still going to do the tier list of their op-ed writers, just because I do think that will provide value. But yeah, I'll link the playlist to all those New York Times videos that I did, and you can watch those. Yeah, obviously Michael Brooks died last month. That was tragic and unexpected. When you compare him to someone like Bret Stephens, in terms of political commentators, there's no comparison. Both in terms of international knowledge, humor, Michael Brooks was hilarious. Focus on substantive issues. Again, Bret Stephens, David Brooks, very little of that. Michael Brooks, insane amounts on, local, national, international. So yeah, in honor of Michael Brooks, rest in power, Michael Brooks, Lula Livre, Medicare for all, end world hunger. Don't be so toxic about cancel culture. And yeah. See you next time.